Yeah, good morning, everybody, and
Good
Good morning, sir.
kindly mute your speakers so that we'll have. I'll give time for discussion. These slides will be shared by Dr. Najun Swami after the afternoon session. I have one session for now and the other for. Okay, so it's a fairly complex and could be a controversial topic because there are so many unsaid and implicit ideas. So don't get provoked in any way. Try to absorb because it is for many of you the first time you are getting exposed to these things, and also.
Namaste, sir.
Yeah, please kindly mute. Yeah. Many of you are quite unaware of the subtleties and the depth of this. So we will go through some basic idea, and in each of them, not all, I'm sure, because I've seen the rest of the timetable for this week. But each of these things that I briefly mention or gloss over will be done in detail by more subject experts. Okay. So the outline of this presentation is we need to understand what knowledge systems are, how various knowledge systems have evolved, what is the value and impact of knowledge systems specific to Indian knowledge system, and how the growth of Indian knowledge system happened, how did it get suppressed, and eventually what one calls the destruction of Indian knowledge system. It's also important to know how Indian knowledge system still survived. So there is enough material and value to revive, consolidate, build, and maybe even allow it to grow further. And what could be the future of IKS? Some action points. Okay. So what do we really mean by knowledge system? Basically, it's an organized structure and a very dynamic process. So it's both organized and dynamic. It's involved in generating and representing content, component classes, or types of knowledge, which is domain specific or characterized by domain relevant features as defined by the user or the consumer of this knowledge system. And it is also reinforced by a set of logical relationships that connect the content or various components or attributes of this knowledge. Okay. You have lived, you continue to live every moment by such things. Only thing, you may not have spent time trying to figure out what it is and why it is like that. Okay. Now, things to observe in any knowledge system, because it is organized and dynamic, it is more closed because it's organized. It's more closed than open. Openness includes tremendous amount of dynamics. Okay. Because it's also dynamic, changes are possible. So it's not as closed as a watertight compartment. Okay. Even though certain knowledge systems are, yet the changes are slow, very slow, and eventually or sometimes it becomes explosive. So when you can't tolerate a change and it's so valuable, so persistent, you suddenly accommodate it. So that's really how many very rigid knowledge systems have either collapsed or they have undergone phenomenal transformation, which they could have easily done slowly, but because they were resisting, these things have happened. And many independent knowledge systems exist and have been more competing than cooperating with each other. Even today, there are at least 12 knowledge systems which are concurrently existing, being practiced and used, but there is less synergy in them. There's more of conflict than of cooperation. And knowledge systems are evolved entities. It's not necessarily that they are, too rigid like cement, brick and cement, even though some are, and are characterized by behavior of people who use or are dependent on this. Okay. And you get a very complete shade, like a rainbow, a complete shade of people who agree, follow, reinforce, endorse, use everything. Starting from one extreme, who are the fundamentalists of this knowledge system. There are practitioners, there are observers, there are skeptics, and there are some large number of blind followers. Okay. This is apart from the material aspects. Even though the knowledge system does deal with the material aspects based or related to the knowledge system, which is also dynamic. For example, you can see our external affairs policies and things are highly influenced by who supplies oil to us and what is our state of foreign exchange. Okay. uh, we are friendly with many nations whom we don't agree on either political or ideological issues, but because they supply vitamin fuel to us, we seem to have modified, moderated this thing. Okay. This is going on. So this is the dynamic part of every knowledge system. And we can see practical examples and insights and various components of knowledge system. For example, in our own knowledge system, you have Ayurvedic system, but you also find that it is dominated by allopathic medical system. Okay, allopathic medical knowledge system, which is one component of the Western knowledge system. In education, you have Gurukulas, you have madrasas, convent and public schooling systems, whether they are state or CBSE. In the finance sector, you have barter system, which still exists today in isolated communities. You have commercial banking, you have post office banking, which gives more interest than commercial banking. You have Islamic banking, you have money lenders, which are all the economic knowledge systems, various types. And in fact, barter system to money lenders, these two are diametrically opposite, okay, in their tenets and in their rules and their etc. Many or most of these are consolidated over centuries of use, influenced by cultural, socio-economic, political factors, and in recent times by resources and environmental factors. Okay. In fact, what we can easily see is any knowledge system in the world is going to be heavily influenced and changes made because of climate factors. And you observe what is closed and open in this. For example, when you go to many Ayurvedic doctors, they will outrightly reject other systems. And if you go to allopathic medical system practitioners and discuss, they will outrightly reject any other supplement, complement, intervention, whatever it is. Okay. So many of these tend to be very rigid, and that rigidity gives them inertia to persist for some time. And even though the many things have been quite quote unquote sacred for thousands of years, they have preserved themselves in that form. So maybe the right question has not been asked, or the right context has not been experienced. Okay. So how do we understand knowledge system? All knowledge systems exhibit expressions either explicitly, implicitly, or in a subtle manner during their use. So knowledge system is not just static written books or oral traditions, even though they contribute, but you experience it when you interact, use, share, transact, whatever. Okay. Its characteristic can be seen in the way the society handles its economy, education, law and governance, gender and other equalities and inequalities. So you have Hindu personal law, Muslim personal law. There are other rules for marriages in other caste and community, etc., etc. Okay. And there are other extremes where one law is common for all, irrespective of cultural and religious denominations. Correct? One can also infer from many socio-cultural and attitudinal aspects of its citizens, their behavior, conduct, and ethos. For example, people conduct Vana Mahotsav, worshipping of trees. A very rare thing. A very rare thing that you find in rest of the world. Okay. Why is it that such a practice or such a cultural aspect evolved here, even though ideally it should have happened in Middle East where the number of trees are very less. So trees must have been very sacred. Whereas here where you have, dense forest where you can't even move inside, still the trees are revered. Okay. So you will have such thousands of such things in every knowledge system. Okay. You can question, discuss, find out whether it is relevant for present context, whatever it is. Okay. Unfortunately, many aspects of knowledge system is linked with religious beliefs in all cases, either strongly or moderately or very subtle, even though they may not say it explicitly. For example, many rules of admission into higher education in Europe and America, particularly Europe, Cambridge, Oxford. You may have heard a lot about them. The rules there for admission was done in such a way so that you didn't have too many Jews getting admitted. So they wanted to keep the Jews out. So they made the admission rules like that, and it still continues even today. Okay. So there's an interesting thing that I frequently hear. There's a beautiful song by John Lennon called Imagine, where he says there is no heaven, no earth, no heaven, no hell, nobody to follow, nobody to impress. So really free people, how it would be. And let me tell you, we still are not fully free in many sense. Nobody other than some isolated indigenous groups. Okay. The question now arises: which knowledge system is right? Meaning, what is really the most valuable or whatever it is. And all knowledge systems have evolved over time: culture and geography, trade and interaction. Some less, some more. Some are lost over time. Some knowledge systems don't exist. For example, a large number of the knowledge system that pertains to the Aztecs and Incas in South America, or even, for example, the Parsis. I mean, one time half of Middle East was Zoroastrian influence, but today you have only pockets. All this happens. All this has happened over history. Okay. Of course, there have been dramatic shift from one knowledge system to another in the course of nations. For example, Japan suddenly was highly Buddhist, Shinto, whatever orders of Buddhist philosophy and knowledge system that prevailed there till about 16th century. And suddenly they decided that they need to incorporate what is today known as the Western knowledge system in a significant way. So you see very interesting pattern in Japan where the whole of society is dominated and practices Western knowledge system outside their houses, but inside their houses they still are predominantly Buddhist and Shinto and other orders of Buddhist derivatives. Okay. So it's very clear they have a knowledge system quite different within the house, and outside the house in the entire country, the other knowledge system. We also have something similar. I'm willing to believe that everybody has something similar like that. They have a very dear and near and whatever evolved knowledge system within their confines, and outside world is quite different. Okay. It also happened in Turkey when Ataturk suddenly decided that he's going to use modern science and technology, and that's the reason. Please mute. You're all teachers. Please mute. I'll definitely give time for discussion, but don't don't do back channel talking. Okay. So look at North and South America. North and South America till 16th century was completely indigenous knowledge system. So everything that you see in North and South America today as a Western knowledge system representation is only about 300 years old. Okay. Same is China. China suddenly shifted from Confucius and Taoism and Buddhism, which dominated till around 1950. And then it suddenly changed its ideology into a Western based on communist ideology. And a lot of their 5,000 years of knowledge system under which they had evolved, they just gave it up. Same as Russia, even though now there is another backlash. Now they're getting back to their older knowledge system. So there's a great revival of the Russian and the Greek Orthodox Church there, and etc. etc. Of course, North Korea is another exception. They made everybody believe only in the father-son combination. Okay, so these things go on everywhere. Many have adapted. Many have adapted or reformed to add value to their knowledge system, lest it should be found redundant. This is another thing. You'll see that happening now in Saudi Arabia, where slowly the knowledge system on which they have lived for last 2000 years or is slowly being reformed because they are finding it difficult to whatever call and adjust or interact with the rest of the world. Okay. Many are outdated. Some are rigidly deployed using very undemocratic forces and violently. Good example is North Korea. Okay. It is tough because balance is needed and society changes much slower than many individuals. The change in the knowledge system is very easy for individuals, but the change of knowledge system for a society as a whole is very slow. And you can see that dress and food habits have changed so much. For example, you hardly see anybody in Bangalore wearing, kurta pajama or dhoti. It's all jeans and t-shirt, and everybody has switched over to fast food. And sports is another. For example, even though we are trying to focus a lot on Indian knowledge system, our whole country lives by cricket, which is a British game. Okay. And the whole world lives on football, which has nothing to do with any of the other knowledge systems. Okay. So what knowledge systems now operate? There are many shades of knowledge systems that abound the planet Earth. Many of them who may not even be fully clear what exactly they are actually using. Okay. It is quite blurry in many cases because there's a huge range of blending that has happened. Only very isolated societies have maintained their original knowledge system and have little or no interaction with other knowledge systems. You find them in Andamans and in Amazon. I have met some of them. Very interesting. We will come to that. A great majority, however, use 2 to 3 different knowledge systems for different purposes. For example, what we are doing now. What we are doing is a Western education system governing IITs and universities. But what we have for food in the morning and afternoon now, the kind of dress that we wear and the living styles are more closer to our Indian knowledge system or the local knowledge system, right? So this is one. There are numerous examples. That's why it's very difficult to characterize a society by a unique knowledge system anymore. It's a melting point. It's happened not now, it's happened for over 4,000 years. And what is now being questioned is interesting. We'll come to that. So what knowledge systems are in contention now? The most dominant knowledge system is the Western or the modern developed economy or modern scientific knowledge system. This so-called Western knowledge system is mainly the original Greco-Roman model. And as we can see it, most prevalent either in full or more than 50% in almost all countries of the world today. Even in India, even in very very traditional places, you will see 50% of the Western scientific modern knowledge system prevalent. And in many in Europe and America, it's almost 100% exclusively them. There are other knowledge systems that are Oriental in nature. They could be from Arabia, Middle East, India, China, Japanese. Africans also had even today, they have a large number of interesting original knowledge systems. Where we need to exercise caution is while appearing to be characterized by cultural religious aspect, it is not so. And in many cases, cultural, ideological, technological factors have overruled, like I said in China and in Russia and North Korea and all that. Even though North Korea is predominantly, derivative of Mongol and Buddhist philosophies culturally, but their practice is hardcore Western material knowledge system. Okay. Now, which knowledge systems exist now? The Western knowledge system, which we call it as WKS, predominantly in Europe, North America, and China. Today, China has converted itself to one of the strongest Western knowledge system entity just in over 30 years now. Okay. This covers about 50% of the world population. Its other name is modern scientific system. It also relates to 75% of the current economics. So almost 75% of the world money is held in the Western knowledge system, okay, or because of Western knowledge system, or through Western knowledge system. There's also the Arabic knowledge system. Predominantly, you find them in Middle East, North Africa, in the Indian subcontinent, Central Asia, Indonesia, and Malaysia. They cover about 30% of the world population, but it controls 70% of the petroleum economy of the world. Okay. Why I'm bringing in the money angle is money has played a significant role in shaping, consolidating, changing, diverting the knowledge systems everywhere. Okay. The other knowledge system that exists now is the Indian knowledge system, predominantly in the Indian subcontinent. Quite a lot of it is still in Southeast Asia, Tibet, Japan, and it covers about 25% of the world population. It also relates to about 25% of the world economy. Okay. Then there are very interesting indigenous knowledge system exists in all parts of the world, more so in India, Africa, and South America. They cover only about 5% of the world population, but this indigenous knowledge system is a predecessor to all knowledge systems in the world. It is from these indigenous knowledge systems that the mainstream large knowledge systems have evolved. Okay. Again, no society lives exclusively on one knowledge system except the indigenous knowledge system. Many live with a blended version of at least 2, possibly 3, up to 4 different knowledge systems. Okay. Our dress, our food, our job, our rules of social conduct, our economic perceptions, etc., etc. So much is different. So people do 2 things. They try to pick the best of others, or they adjust to compulsively address to things. For example, many people go from here to Saudi Arabia for employment. And here a lady can walk alone, unaccompanied in, let's say, Bangalore or Mysore for shopping. Whereas there, you have to adapt to that rule there, which says the knowledge system says that unaccompanied women are not allowed, whatever. Okay. So people have 2 to 3 to 4 is very common. That's the hallmark of human adaptation. Okay. But what are we focusing on this program? And since this is the first introductory talk, I need to focus on what me and others are going to do. It's clear that currently we all lead a life based on a blended knowledge system, dominated by Indian knowledge system and considerable Western knowledge system. The formal education, economy, and industry is dominated by Western knowledge system. The way our college runs, the way our education system runs, the way we examine people, the way we give jobs, the way we monitor work, all that. It's here we are questioning what IKS is and attempting to put more IKS into our existing lifestyle, as it is clear that we are now facing more negative issues with overload of Western knowledge system. Okay. One of the best examples of this is, please remember, COVID virus was created in the lab by a Western knowledge system. And you saw what happened. So similarly, the climate issue, what we are facing now in the world, is a consequence of the Western knowledge system. The kind of political economics that's going on in the world is also because of the Western knowledge. So one feels, even in the West, many are arguing that the Western knowledge system as it is now has probably reached its saturation level. It cannot give anything more positive to society, and it has already crossed the law of diminishing returns, which means as we progress more and more in that, we are going to get more and more damage rather than positive things. And we experience it. Okay. Yeah. What is the dream? To live by significant components of IKS only. The question now is it possible? Is it meaningful? Or is it productive? We need to evaluate that. Look at it. Okay. Since all the time we are bombarded by Western knowledge system, it's interesting to see what Western knowledge system really is. This is something evolved over 3,000 years, and in the socio-cultural geography of the Greece, Rome, and Middle East, so-called the Fertile Crescent, coming up to borders of Iran, all factors, that is what socio-cultural geographic factors, have played significant role in shaping this and continue to do so. Please don't underestimate the role of geography and flora, fauna in the way the knowledge system has developed. Okay. There is one book that is sacred, and it is monotheist, which does not include female and child gods. So females and child versions of human existence are not recognized in godly forms. Its main character is belief in redemption at death and moral compass grounded in belief in only one God, which is male, and in only one book. Whether they are the Jews, Christians, or Muslims, they believe in one God and one book. Okay. Even though they are all first cousins, they all are called Abrahamic. Okay. It has been institutionalized very early. In fact, 2nd century AD, Christianity got institutionalized. That's when the Vatican, the popes started. Rebelling or questioning of tenets is not permitted and results in excommunication or death. Okay. And these have been documented well. And the tenets in these are very harsh because the geography has been very harsh, cruel, and very acquiring in nature. For example, clearly say no heaven for non-followers, eye for an eye, death to kafirs. All these are very common. Okay. So the geography has made their rules quite hard. Okay. What is Indian knowledge system? This is something that's evolved over 5,000 years. And in the socio-cultural geography of the Bharat, that is Indian subcontinent, all factors have played significant role in shaping. There is no one book that is sacred, and it is polytheist, including female and child gods. So it's a highly non-individualistic knowledge system. Its main character is belief in rebirth and the moral compass grounded in dharma and karma. So we will never say, have you been a good, we say, have you observed your dharma and karma correctly? Whereas in any other knowledge system, they'll say, have you been a good follower of this religion, whatever, okay? It has either not been institutionalized or has multiple institutions along different philosophies, thus multiple parallel authority. Each can suit oneself or move to the other or even disown. For example, the famous Charvaka school of philosophy, more or less negated everything that was well established by then. It continues to be used. Okay. Tenets in these are very gentle, bountiful, and giving in nature. So this is really what is, welfare of all. These are the things. It doesn't say welfare of my own. It says welfare of all. Okay. Of course, every knowledge system has problems. You can see that. The best two examples I will give. This is the case with Galileo. As after all, Galileo is almost the father of modern science and technology. The seed with which Renaissance movement started in southern Italy, moved on to Europe, which eventually led to Western knowledge system, which now dominates. He was born in Pisa in 1564 and died in 1642 in Arcetri in Italy. In 1632, he wrote a book called The Dialogue Concerning Two Chief World Systems, which is basically two different knowledge systems. And at that time, Pope Urban VIII was the Pope. He projected a heliocentric view, which was opposed by church, and it was treated anti-Christian view of the creation. He was put under house arrest because he agreed to withdraw the proof. Otherwise, they had ordered him to be beheaded. Okay. So he was under house arrest from 1632 to 1642, simply because he said, sun is the center of the universe and earth revolves around it, which is exactly opposite of the worldview then held by the Pope. Okay. So what is interesting is almost 500 years later, they repeated the same mistake. Similar thing happened in Pontifical Seminar on Big Bang, which was on November 22nd, 2001. When Big Bang was proved, they called even great scientists like Stephen Hawking. And the debate went on for 2-3 days. And then the seminar concluded that Big Bang happened and the universe started. And the Pope was very intelligent. He came and asked Stephen Hawking, okay, we agree now that the Big Bang happened and the universe started. What was before the Big Bang? So Stephen Hawking said, we don't know what happened before the Big Bang. Then he said, thank you very much. He honored everybody and said, and then the church declared that before the Big Bang, God was there to create the Big Bang. Okay, so this is typically how it, so you have to be very cautious. Knowledge systems can be very rigid and they can also be very stupid. Conflicts and contradictions is there in every knowledge system. There is no knowledge system which is free of conflicts and contradiction, including our IKS. Okay. So how you handle contradiction, how do you handle conflict, that leads to reforms. Okay. What are the main reasons for decline of Indian knowledge system? While Indian knowledge system was suppressed by the Arabic knowledge system because they lacked total control over the geography and polity from the period 12th century till 18th century. Okay. It was still vibrant in many local geographies that held on to Indian knowledge system. Examples abound in much of South India, and it's very interesting. There's some research topic that I have started. Is this the reason why South India is quote unquote better than rest of the country in socio-economic, industrial and cultural parameters? Is this the reason why? Because we didn't have the onslaught and the continuous onslaught and changing of our knowledge system by an alien knowledge system with which majority could not even align. Okay. But however, the real damage to IKS came from the following. The British colonial rule from 1825. 1799 was the last fourth Mysore War. After that, Britishers had a free hand. So they started intervening. And the worst kind of intervention happened here. You look at this. This is the original document reported on 2nd February 1835 in British Parliament. This is Macaulay's address to the British Parliament. He says, I have traveled across the length and breadth of India. I have not seen one person who is a beggar, who is a thief. Such wealth I have seen in this country, such high moral values, people of such caliber, that I do not think we would ever conquer this country unless we break the very backbone of this nation, which is her spiritual and cultural heritage, And therefore, I propose that we replace our old and ancient education system, her culture, for if the Indians think that all that is foreign and English is good and greater than their own, they will lose their self-esteem, their native culture, and they will become what we want them, a truly dominated nation. This is, in fact, you can go to the website and look at all other things, including his personal letters that he has written to his friends and parents about all these things. Okay. Not just that, in the argument that happened, in one point, I fully agree with the gentleman to whose general views I'm opposed. This is what is happening in the parliament. I feel them that it is impossible for us with our limited means to attempt to educate the body of the people, referring to the Indians. We must at present do our best to form a class who may be interpreters between us and the millions whom we cover, a class of persons Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, in opinions, in morals, and in intellect. Okay, this is exactly what we jokingly call as coconut, brown outside, white inside. Okay. Even worse, see, he claims, I have no knowledge of either Sanskrit or Arabic. And he says, I have never found one among them who could deny that a single shelf of good European library was worth the whole native literature of India and Arabia. Unbelievable. Kalidasa, Omar Khayyam, so many things. Far outbeats anything in Europe. He is not aware, but this is the kind of arrogance and colonial mentality which has shaped our education. Okay. Neither Sanskrit nor Arabic poetry matched that of Europe. In other branches of learning, the disparity was even greater. Okay. In every branch of physical or moral philosophy, the relative position of the two nations is nearly same. Whereas in technical, literary, and other things, he says Europeans, Englishmen are superior. You can see this is exactly how they planned the education. It is, see, it is royal simulacrum. No dogs are Indians. They viewed us worse than dogs. And all of us, unfortunately, are still products of a system so bad and so humiliating to us. Yet we want to thrive in this, yet we value this. So what does a knowledge system really do? Okay, so any knowledge system, not IKS alone. So it has a purpose of interaction, reinforcement, consolidation, and purpose among its attributes. So there is a strong cultural factor, there is a strong economic value, there is a received and a perceived wisdom, and they all reinforce each other, interact. So it's like a cycle which wheel which turns and turns over years, dropping off some uncomfortable things, etc., etc. Sometimes keeping wrong things because rigidity allows that, etc. Okay. In particular, what is the Indian knowledge system? The Indian knowledge system is predominantly dominated by oral and written traditions. You have about 20% written traditions and at least 80% oral. There's a large amount of utilitarian and welfare aspects without which the society will not remain for long. And given the socio-geographic diversity, the climate patterns, etc., there's tremendous amount of diversity of forms and culture. And in fact, the most diverse culture in the world is India. We have already about 600 languages, 22 official languages. There are 600 other languages which many of you don't even have script. And even within our own state of Karnataka, you will see there's so much of change from one part of the state to another part. The dialects change, the food habits change, the customs change, the language change, so many things. Okay. And the moral compass is dominated by core and related dharmic text and sayings or whatever it is, the four Vedas and etc., etc. So there is no single book. no single institution. Okay. People talk a lot and saying what the people use the word sustainability very, very easily, as if it's a thing that can be achieved. You really want to see a sustainable living, you look at this rainforest in Brazil. There's a small community. There are some hundreds of such communities. And there's a one community based on indigenous knowledge system where you have housing for about 100 people. And you can see there are no closed doors. And it's a very open society, but it's closed outside. No other community is allowed. And there are such hundreds of such. In fact, whole of South America was filled with such communities. Even today in Brazil, the rainforest is filled with at least hundreds and thousands of such communities living quite isolated. They are sustainable. We are not sustainable. In fact, today the most unsustainable thing in the world is Mysore University. Okay. So, sustainability question, which cannot be answered by any of the established mainstream knowledge system, has been solved here because they never went anything beyond this. The moment the population expanded to 200 or 250, about 100 of them would move out and start something similar about 10 kilometers away. And in the habitat around that, that was their sustenance. They lived around this, lived for it. They didn't bother others. Others didn't bother them. Of course, they don't have script. They don't have a motor car. They don't have mobile phone. They don't have internet. But they are stable and sustainable. In fact, it's only now we understand that when urbanization started, that is when the great civilizations started about between 3,000 and 5,000 years back, that was the first time unsustainability of societies was built in. Indigenous communities are still sustainable. Only indigenous hunter-gatherer society was the last time the world was sustainable. But they are there everywhere. Look at this. This is here in Middle Andamans. Okay. So these are actual videos taken from boats going nearby. They still live by bow and arrow. And it's a very interesting thing. This is a scene taken from the helicopter where this native tribal, Santhalis as they are called, he came to shoot an arrow at a helicopter, Indian Air Force helicopter. This was after the tsunami. And of course, the Middle Andamans is banned. Nobody can go there without government permission. And it happened that in 2018, an American missionary was killed by members while trying to convert them to Christianity. His illegal attempt to contact could have wiped out the entire tribe through introducing new diseases such as flu, to which the Santhalis community have no immunity. This is exactly what happened in South America. In South America, when Christopher Columbus went there, 80% of the population died not because of war, but because of the diseases carried from the old world. Plague, cholera, typhoid, all this, flu, everything was taken by them. They were immune, but they were carrying the germs. In fact, before the Spanish soldiers could move to successive villages, people had already died there because the virus had already spread. It was at least 100 times worse than what we experienced in COVID. Okay, so sustainability implies indigenous knowledge. So as we now face tremendous unsustainability problem due to Western knowledge system or any other mainstream knowledge system, the questions being asked is, can we look back and see how much of valuable things can be put in now, which makes things more sustainable? Okay. There are some interesting practices. We can look at that. So in conclusion for the first session, because I'm going to open the portal for discussion, feel free to ask questions. Indian knowledge system is important and many useful aspects have neither been given its due nor evaluated effectively in the context of our lives. For example, the school where my son goes, the only rule is that you have to wear cotton, because synthetic clothes are environmental hazards. Today, one of the biggest problems of climate is because of plastic. Okay. So it's a very simple rule, which actually makes sense because we have always lived by cotton. Now you see how stupid people look where, let's say, take Chennai in summer. Chennai in summer is about 42 degrees centigrade with about 99% humidity. People come with coat, suit, tie. That fellow is miserable, pulling his head all the time, trying to, trying to loosen so that he's perspiring, yet he wants the suit and boot because he is a salesperson. Okay. So we have never evaluated many interesting things. I'm not saying everything is interesting. Evaluated effectively in the context of our lives. Okay. Indian knowledge system has to contend and compete with other knowledge systems, many of which are coercive and are seductive. Fast food, internet, jeans, and t-shirt. Very difficult to get younger generation who will eventually be adults and the torch bearers for a knowledge system to get out of these four things. I'm not saying these four things are bad. And today, modern mathematics, technology, and life sciences, particularly bio things and pharma, now rule the roost all over the world. Almost 99% of the population have a Crocin in their house, a Dolos 650, and they have a thermometer, they have this, that, TV, mobile, etc. And the question is how, where, when, and how much of Indian knowledge system to be positioned in the gamut of life. This is something that is going to be debated over the next few years, because apart from the world and because of the world too, we do have certain crises which are unsolvable. Climate issue is almost unsolvable through the Western knowledge system. And today, India is the one of the world leader in drug-resistant viruses that are prevalent in Indian market already. Indian population slowly is becoming drug-resistant, meaning no antibiotics will work. We have the world's largest population of drug-resistant patients in India already, and it is growing. Okay. Okay, so now we will open the session for discussion. Any or few of you whosoever feels like can unmute and ask a question or two.
Sir, namaste.
Yeah, when you ask the question, you please indicate where you are and what is your domain of work, so that context specific answers, if they are known to me, I can share, or others can also do. Yeah.
Sir, namaste. This is Baslingappa Arwalad from JSS College, Dharwad. I represent political science, sir, or largely social science.
Okay.
Sir, my question is, can Indian knowledge system or indigenous knowledge system help to sustain and wash out today's India's intellectual hypocrisy, sir?
A very challenging question. But there is no other way but to do it, because I think our problem with education is because of what you have mentioned.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that's one thing that seriously needs to be addressed. But whether it can be addressed in the institutional form, I don't know. I doubt if it can be introduced, solved in the institutional form, but I'm fully convinced it can be solved at the individual level. So individually, we may have to work on that. Institutional framework may actually distort it further, or replace this with another monster which may be even worse than this. Okay.
Sir, supplementary to this question,
Yes.
sir, how best can we implement or adopt Indian knowledge system in the social science domain, sir?
Social science domain is very interesting because
Yes.
it is a fertile ground for large components of Indian knowledge system to be adapted.
Yes, sir.
Because if you look at any knowledge system, the Indian knowledge system is culturally, socially, and politically the most diverse and robust. We have not valued this. For example, you look at the work of the Remembered Village.
Yes, sir. Srinivas.
M.N. Srinivas. I mean, it's one of the most valuable book in the world, prescribed more in Europe and America than in India. The reason is he was able to capture the intricacies, the subtleties, the value of caste and class, which dominates Indian social fabric very well. But I was lucky, I met him before he passed away. Very interesting field work based. Okay. Yeah. So a lot of things. And if you look at a book like Arthashastra, it is probably the most valuable book even today, even though it was written 2,500 years back, because it was one of the first interdisciplinary book. Our problem with social sciences today in India is it has become highly disciplinary, and there is great disconnect between all components of social sciences, which rightly is interdisciplinary. So having grown in silos, people, in fact, they do more negative contribution to sociology than what they should do. Yeah. Anything else?
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, tell me.
Hello. Good morning, sir. Myself, Revama, sir, from Business College, Chamranagar. Sir, my question is, actually, in our country, we have different religions, different languages. In spite of that, we are adapted to the changes evolving during the course of time. So, how it may change or how it will affect in future, sir? Any your opinion about that, sir?
Yeah, come again. I couldn't get your question correctly.
Sir, actually, in our country, we have so many religions, so many languages, and so many traditions. No, sir. So, in spite of that, we are accommodated, we are adapted to that changes happening in the course of time, during the course of time, and even it may change in future also. So, this Indian knowledge system in future, how it will affect the life of a person or a society in general, sir?
See, you have already answered your question in the sense that one reason we have so many different cultures, languages, lifestyles simultaneously existing is because this land has lived by Indian knowledge system. So other knowledge systems, if you look at, don't allow any diversity or change. We are now unfortunately questioning that it is not changing. It has changed so much. There is very little scope to change further. How much amount of diversity is already been allowed? Instead of structuring it correctly, we have started questioning wrongly. In fact, they should go and look at other knowledge systems where there is no scope for diversity. You find it happening in Bangladesh, you find it happening in Afghanistan, Pakistan, you find it happening in Croatia and Bosnia, Herzegovina in Europe. So one has to be more knowledgeable in analyzing this rather than reacting to media or to individuals. by nature, because our nature is bountiful, it has always given us rain and food. This knowledge system locally has been very accommodating. In fact, our problem seems to be of over accommodation and over liberal outlook. And don't take the JNU viewpoint. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes, good morning, sir.
Yes.
Sir, I am from Delhi. My question is that how education system can be modified, or we can say what steps education system should take to adopt the Indian knowledge system formally.
Okay.
Informally, but formally, what can be done?
See, the issue is pretty clear. We have a Macaulay education system which is producing so many thousands of graduates, majority of whom are unemployable. And that's the reason we have so much of social issues that emerge. Whereas even today, look at the Western knowledge system, which has changed. In fact, Germany and North Europe, Scandinavian countries have understood it very well. Their first emphasis is on skill, and when they cross the skill barriers, they enter the knowledge space. So, in fact, in Scandinavian countries, after class 10, you are given 2 years of skilling, and if you want to continue for higher knowledge, you have to take an exam and prove that you can get in there. Otherwise, you have an exceedingly good employment opportunity, which means you can live well as a citizen of the country with the skill. In fact, the difference between the Group D staff and the professor is only about 6.5% of the salary. My student is a professor in Norway. He had come just 15 days back. He said it is not worth being a professor because for 6.5% extra salary, we have to struggle so much. Whereas the person who comes and sweeps and cleans the room, the janitor, is very happy. He drives a BMW car, which I can't afford. So this is what we have done. We have falsely given value to some titles and other things. We should have gone for high skilling, because that was what the Indian knowledge system was. We look at 16th century, 27% of the world GDP was from India, and all of it was because of skill. It was not because of knowledge. So I think we have to shape this false, worthless labeling and degree generating education system. And even today, many who don't have degree live well. Look at the carpenter near your house. You have to wait for him to come, because that fellow is very busy. A good carpenter earns more than a neurosurgeon today. So skill has always liberated people, and skill is what runs the society. Knowledge doesn't run the society. Skill runs the society. We have forgotten that. Okay? So I think this kind of shaping will happen.
Yes, thank you, sir.
ಸರ್ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ, ಹೇಳಿ.
ಸರ್ ಹೆಸರು ಹೊನ್ನರಾಜು ಅಂತ, ಕಲಾ ಮತ್ತು ವಾಣಿಜ್ಯ ಹೊನ್ನರಾಜು SV ಅಂತ, ಕಲಾ ವಾಣಿಜ್ಯ ಕಾಲೇಜು ಕಿತ್ತೂರು ರಾಣಿ ಚೆನ್ನಮ್ಮ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ ಸರ್.
ಓಕೆ, ಟೆಲ್ ಮಿ.
ಸರ್ ತಾವು ಎಜುಕೇಶನ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ವಿ. ಅದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಮೆಕಾಲೆ ಎಜುಕೇಶನ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಇತ್ತಲ್ಲ ಸರ್, ಸೊ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಹೋಲಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಇವಾಗ ತಂತ್ರಜ್ಞಾನ ಆಧಾರಿತ ಶಿಕ್ಷಣಕ್ಕೆ ಅತಿ ಹೆಚ್ಚಿನ ಒಲವನ್ನ ಇವತ್ತು ನಮ್ಮ UGC ಸಹಿತ ಹಲವಾರು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾನಿಲಯಗಳು ಅಳವಡಿಸಿಕೊಂಡಿದೆ. ಬಟ್ ಇವತ್ತಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ನಿರುದ್ಯೋಗ ಹಾಗೆ ಇದೆ. ಜ್ಞಾನವನ್ನ ಅಥವಾ ಕೌಶಲ್ಯವನ್ನ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಮಾಡುವಂತ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಗಮನ ಹರಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು ಕೂಡ ಯಾವ್ದೇ ರೀತಿ ಪ್ರಯೋಜನ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳಿಗೆ ಅವರ ವೃತ್ತಿಗಳನ್ನ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಅನುಕೂಲವಾಗಿರುವಂತಹ ಶಿಕ್ಷಣ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಕಾಲಕ್ಕೆ ಸಿಗ್ತಾ ಇರುವಂತದ್ದು ತುಂಬಾನೇ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಅನ್ನಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಸರ್.
ಹೌದು, ಅದನ್ನ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು.
ಅದೇ ಆ ಕೌಶಲ್ಯ ಆಧಾರಿತ ಶಿಕ್ಷಣವನ್ನ ಕೊಡೋದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಸರ್ಕಾರಗಳು ಮತ್ತೆ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿಗಳು ತಮ್ಮದೇ ಆದಂತಹ ಕೆಲಸವನ್ನ ನಿರ್ವಹಿಸಬೇಕು. ಅದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಆಗ್ತಿದೆ. ಇದಕ್ಕೆ
ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಆಗಲ್ಲ. ಅದು ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ ಆಗಲ್ಲ. ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ ಎಷ್ಟು ಕೆಟ್ಟೋಗಿದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್, ಅದನ್ನ ಸ್ಲೋಲಿ ಕ್ಲೋಸ್ ಮಾಡಕ್ ಬಿಡ್ತಾ ಇದಾರೆ. ನನಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತು ಏನಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ. ದೇ ಆರ್ ಸ್ಲೋಲಿ ಕಿಲ್ಲಿಂಗ್ ಹೈಯರ್ ಎಜುಕೇಶನ್ ಇನ್ ಇಂಡಿಯಾ.
ಹೌದು ಸರ್. ಮತ್ತೆ ಈಗ NEP ಅಂತ ತಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಆ NEP ನಲ್ಲಿ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳಿಗೆ ಈಗ ಒಂದ್ 2-3 ತಿಂಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಕಲ್ಸೋದಾದ್ರೂ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಸರ್? ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ಗಳೇ 1.5 ತಿಂಗಳು ನಡೆಯುತ್ತೆ, ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂಯೇಷನ್ 1.5 ತಿಂಗಳು ನಡೆಯುತ್ತೆ. ಸಿಗೋ 2 ತಿಂಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಹುಡುಗರಿಗೆ ಏನಾದ್ರೂ ಕಲ್ಸಕ್ ಸಾಧ್ಯ? ಯಾವ ಕೌಶಲ್ಯನ ಅವ್ರು ಅಳವಡಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ವೃತ್ತಿಗಳನ್ನ ಪಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಆಗ್ತಿದೆ? ಈಗ ಒಬ್ಬ ಡಿಗ್ರಿ ಮುಗಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೊರಗಡೆ ಬಂದ್ರೆ ಅವ್ನಿಗೆ ಸಿಗ್ತಾ ಇರೋ ಸ್ಯಾಲ್ರಿ ಯಾವ್ದಾದ್ರು ಹೋಗ್ತಾನೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ 10 ರಿಂದ 11 ಸಾವಿರ ಅಥವಾ 8 ರಿಂದ 10 ಸಾವಿರ ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ಅವನ ಜ್ಞಾನನೂ ಇಂಪ್ರೂವ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಅಥವಾ ಕೆಲ್ಸಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಅದರಲ್ಲೂ ಅವನು ವೆಲ್ ಸೆಟಲ್ ಆಗಕ್ಕೂ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಈ ರೀತಿ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆನಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿಗಳು ಏನ್ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೆ?
ಅದು ಈಗ ಅದು ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ, ಸ್ಕ್ವೇರ್ ಪೆಗ್ ಇನ್ ಎ ರೌಂಡ್ ಹೋಲ್ ಅಂತ. ಇದು ಏನಾಗಿದೆ, ಅವಸರದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ದಬಾವಣೆಯಿಂದ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅರ್ಧ ಜನಕ್ಕೆ ಈಗ ಇದು ಎಜುಕೇಶನ್ ಇಸ್ ಎ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಸಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್, ಪಾಲಿಸಿ ಇಸ್ ಎ ಸೆಂಟ್ರಲ್ ಗವರ್ಮೆಂಟ್. ಪಾಲಿಸಿಗೂ ಪ್ರಾಕ್ಟೀಸ್ಗೂ ತುಂಬಾ ಗ್ಯಾಪ್. ಇನ್ನೊಂದು, ಕರೆಂಟ್ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟೀಸ್ ಆರ್ ನಾಟ್ ಎಕ್ವಿಪ್ಡ್ ಟು ಹ್ಯಾಂಡಲ್ NEP. ದೇ ಆರ್ ನಾಟ್ ಎಕ್ವಿಪ್ಡ್. We had that bad experience in NAP in Karnataka when first
ಇನ್ನೊಂದು, ಹುಡುಗರು ಜ್ಞಾನ ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿ ಪಡಿಸ್ಕೊಳಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ಸರ್. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ PG ಲೆವೆಲ್ ಸ್ಟಡಿ
ಹೌದು.
ಈಗ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಓರಿಯೆಂಟೆಡ್ ಅನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಸಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಗಳನ್ನ ತಂದು ಈಗ ಡಿಗ್ರಿಗೆ ಹಾಕಿರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಏನ್ ಅಧ್ಯಯನ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅವರು ಅಂತ ಸಿಗದೆ 2 ತಿಂಗಳು ಸರ್. ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ನಾವು ಪಾಠ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ 2 ತಿಂಗಳು.
So it is a good idea with bad, good planning with bad implementation. This is a common problem. Good plan, bad implementation, or bad plan, well implemented. So this is really what is happening in India. Entire education, Ibuttala, last 40-50 years. Good plan, bad implementation, or bad plan, good implementation. Many times bad plan, bad implementation. So there has never been good planning and good implementation except in isolated pockets. For example, Nodi, one of the world's best education system is in India. Many of you know. It is after SSLC, a 2-3-year program. 1-year program, 2-year program, 3-year programs are there, called NTTF, Network Technical Training Foundation in Electronic City. It is a world's best skilling program, because when you come out of that program, all over the world, people want you to be employed. Immediately jobs are available. Very well structured. That came from the people who made Amol project also did that NTTF. Very well designed by Swiss people for Indian conditions. Because now NTTF is a franchise mode, and even today 95% of all people who come out of NTTF program get some decent employment after SSLC. Why is it that university cannot do this? Why is it university can sadhyavilla? Why? So this is really what the issue is. Forcing NEP will not work. There are a lot of good things in NEP, but there are so many other issues which prevent anything nice from happening in most educational systems. Because education system doesn't have a goal, clear goal. When it has a clear goal, it doesn't have the milestones needed to reach that. When both are available, resources are not available. Please remember, many colleges find it very difficult to provide duster and chalk piece. Whereas when you want skill-based education, you need lot of resources. Without giving resources, you cannot do skill education or skill component. So this is one issue, but I'm sure it will take time. Educational changes happen over 10 to 15 years. They will not happen overnight. What is good will take 15-20 years. Maybe the next generation may actually look. In fact, it's very interesting. 70 years back, Rajgopalachari told Nehru, when the first education policy was being told, he said, look at the German model, first skill it out, and after the skilling, when they